All right, so welcome to the Deep Dive, everybody. Today we're diving into, well, let's just say it's a YouTube video that's been making the rounds.
Oh, I think I know the one Snyder Reports, right? The one about Elon Musk and President Trump and rebate checks.
That's the one. A lot of you wanted us to break this down, so here we are.
Sounds like a plan.
So just to get everyone up to speed, this video claims that Elon Musk is going to propose a plan to send $5,000 checks to every American household.
Bold claim for sure. And where's all this money supposed to come from, according to the video?
Cuts. Government spending cuts.
Right. And they link this directly to Musk's role, of course, leading the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge for short.
Doge.
And the video says they're aiming to cut, get this, $2 trillion from the federal budget.
2 trillion? Wow. Okay, so hold on. Let's do some quick math here. 20% of 2 trillion, that's $400 billion.
Right.
And if you divide that by, let's say, 79 million US households, you actually do get something like $5,000 per household.
You're not wrong. The math checks out. But got to point out here, the video itself does actually say that this $5,000 figure, it's entirely dependent on Doge actually hitting that $2 trillion saving still. Big if.
Yeah, big if. They throw out some other numbers too, like 55 billion saved in the first 30 days of the new administration.
Which, let's be real, that would only come out to about $40 per household.
Yeah, not quite as exciting.
Not quite. And this is where things start to get really interesting. The video points out a possible, discrepancy, let's call it, between Doge's reported savings and what some other sources are saying.
Yeah, it's like, okay, the video's throwing these huge numbers around, but then you go to Doge's website, and they're reporting savings of, I think it was around 16.6 billion.
Right, significantly less. So then it begs the question, how are they even calculating these savings? What the method?
Right, right, because the video doesn't, like, go into detail about how they got to these numbers. Like, is it program cuts, finding efficiencies? What are we talking about here?
It's a black box a little bit. And, without that methodology, it's really hard to judge how accurate, how reliable these claims really are.
Totally. Okay, and then there's this whole other thing they bring up, impoundment. Did you get to that part?
Oh, yeah. Essentially, the idea is that the Trump administration could potentially take back unspent funds that are already allocated to states and cities.
So are they saying that's where the rebate money would come from?
Well, the video seems to suggest it's a possibility. But impoundment, that's a whole other can of worms. Legally, politically, it's messy. The video even mentions pushback from some cities and states, which, you can understand why.
Okay, so we've got this plan for rebate checks based on some pretty big spending cuts and maybe even impoundment. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of questions. Do you think there's any chance this could actually happen?
Honestly, too early to say. The video lays out an interesting possibility, sure, but we need a lot more information, more transparency, and frankly, less potential for political gamesmanship before I'd say this is anything more than a thought experiment.
That's fair. That's fair. One thing I did notice, the video kept calling them rebates, not, stimulus checks. Seems like a deliberate choice.
Interesting, right?
Yeah. What do you make of that?
Well, rebate just hits different, doesn't it? It frames it as, hey, this is your money, we're just giving it back, versus here's some government assistance. Different vibe.
Could be more appealing to a certain, segment of voters.
Potentially, yeah. Plays into a certain view of government, taxes, all that.
So much to unpack here. It's like the more we dig into this video, the more questions pop up.
Definitely highlights the importance of, not taking things at face value, especially when it comes to something as complicated and potentially impactful as, government spending.
Right. All right. Well, let's shift gears a bit then. We've talked about the video, the claims, but what about Doge itself? What do we actually know about this department, about their track record?
So Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, it's it's a pretty new thing, actually.
Brand new, like just created.
Yeah, President Trump established it at the very start of this term, put Elon Musk in charge.
So less than a year old then.
Yep. And their mission, at least on paper, is to find and, eliminate waste, inefficiency, all that in the federal government. Sort of an internal auditing and streamlining kind of thing, you could say.
Okay. And what if they actually, done so far? The video, like we said, throws out these big numbers, but how much can we actually trust those?
Right. That's the million-dollar question. Doge, they've certainly made headlines. But in terms of, independent analysis of their work, there hasn't been a ton.
Some people are saying their savings estimates are, inflated maybe, or that their methods aren't transparent enough.
Exactly. And that whole discrepancy we talked about between the video and what's on Doge's own website, it does make you wonder.
Raises some red flags.
Yeah. And it's worth remembering, Doge was created by administration that, they haven't exactly been shy about their, let's say, skepticism of the federal bureaucracy.
So there could be a political angle here with all this, push for spending cuts.
It's not impossible. And that's why it's so important to be, to be critical. Look past the talking points, examine the evidence.
Okay, so let's say, hypothetically, Doge actually does achieve these massive savings, like $2 trillion worth. What happens then? I mean, the video is all about these rebate checks, but there are other ways to use that money, right?
Oh, absolutely. Reduce the national debt, invest in infrastructure, fund other programs. I mean, the possibilities are, there are a lot of them. It all boils down to priorities.
And priorities can change, depending on who's in charge, what their ideology is.
For sure. This whole conversation, rebate checks, spending cuts, it all gets back to some pretty fundamental questions about the role of government, doesn't it?
Like, what should the government even be doing?
Right. One side says keep it small, keep it efficient, give the money back to the people.
Which, I mean, that's kind of the Snyder Reports angle, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely aligns with, a more libertarian, fiscally conservative viewpoint, you could say. But then the other side says, no, the government has a responsibility to, provide certain services, safety nets for people who need them, even if it means higher taxes, more spending.
So it's that classic debate, smaller government versus a more active role for government, like providing healthcare, education, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And there's no, easy answer, is there? It comes down to, I guess, what we value as a society, right? What do we think is the best way to help people, to create a good society?
And how much do we trust the government to actually, handle our money, make those decisions?
Right. There's always that underlying question, are they actually going to use it wisely? Are we getting our money's worth?
Which, again, that's something that Snyder Reports really plays on, this whole narrative of, the government's wasteful, it's bloated, we need someone like Elon Musk to come in and fix it.
Powerful story. And, there's no doubt Musk has shaken things up in the past, done some pretty incredible things. But government, it's a different animal, isn't it?
It's not like Silicon Valley where you can just, disrupt everything and move fast and break things.
Not at all. You've got laws, regulations, politics, all these things that complicate matters. Even if Musk were to propose these rebate checks, there's no guarantee they'd actually happen.
So much depends on Congress, right? Ultimately, they're the ones who would have to approve any spending cuts, any rebate checks.
Oh, for sure. The president can, suggest things, propose things. But Congress, they hold the purse strings. And they're, let's just say they're not known for being quick or decisive.
So even if everything in that video is, 100% accurate, there's still a lot of ifs, ands, or buts between us and those $5,000 checks.
Lots of hurdles to clear. It's important to remember that, I think, to separate the hype from the reality, so to speak.
Totally. I think this deep dive has been really helpful, in unpacking all that. We've gone beyond just repeating what the video says and really dug into the potential consequences, the politics, even the psychology of it all.
Exactly. Critical thinking is key, especially when it comes to something this potentially impactful.
Okay, so where does this leave us? What should our listeners be thinking about after, listening to all this?
Well, I'd say the big takeaway is be cautious about simple solutions to complex problems. Getting a $5,000 check might sound great, but there's a whole lot more to the story, right?
And be critical of the information you're consuming. Don't just believe everything you see, especially from sources that might have an agenda.
Right. Do your research, look for different viewpoints, and ask questions. Don't just take things at face value.
Well said. Well said. If you're listening and this deep dive has, gotten you curious, there's a ton of information out there. Look into Digi, read about government spending and impoundment. Even think about how a sudden windfall like that would affect your own finances. It's worth exploring.
Definitely. And remember, learning's an ongoing process. Stay curious, stay engaged, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Yeah, you can't talk about this rebate check idea without talking about Elon Musk. He's kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And I think it's safe to say he's a bit of a lightning rod, too. Love him or hate him, everyone's got an opinion.
The Snyder Reports video, they definitely lean into that whole Elon Musk, the savior angle, don't they? He's the only one who can fix the government.
It's a good narrative. The guy has a track record, Tesla, SpaceX. He's done some pretty remarkable things. But, government, it's a whole different ballgame.
Right. It's not just about, bringing in some Silicon Valley magic and expecting everything to run smoothly.
Exactly. It's a complicated system, lots of moving parts, lots of different interests at play. And even if Musk were to, officially propose these rebate checks, there's no guarantee they'd actually happen.
It all comes down to Congress, doesn't it?
Ultimately, yeah. The president can make suggestions, but Congress, they're the ones who control the money. And they, let's just say they don't have the best reputation for speed or efficiency.
So even if everything in that video is like completely true, there's still a long road ahead.
A long and winding road, and I think that's something that's important to keep in mind. It's easy to get caught up in the hype, you know, but the reality is often a lot more complicated.
This deep dive, I think it's really helped to sort of shed light on some of those complexities. We've really gone beyond just, the surface level and dug into the details, the potential consequences, the politics of it all.
Absolutely. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Encouraging people to think critically, to question what they see and hear, especially when it comes to something as consequential as government policy.
Okay, so to wrap things up, what are the big takeaways here? What should our listeners be, keeping in mind?
I think the main thing is this. Beware of simple solutions to complex problems. Getting a $5,000 check, sure, it sounds nice. But there's a bigger picture here. There are costs, trade-offs, alternative ways to use that money. It's important to think about all of that.
And like we've been saying, don't just blindly trust any one source of information. Do your own research, look for different perspectives, ask questions.
Exactly. Become informed, become engaged. And, well, that's what these deep dives are all about, right? Giving you the information and the tools you need to make up your own mind.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, for everyone listening, if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to, keep digging, learn more about DOGE, research government spending, impoundment, all of that. Heck, even think about what you would do with an extra 5 grand if you had it. It's a fascinating topic.
Lots to explore. And, remember, learning never stops. Stay curious, stay engaged, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.